Hello. This is about my trip to England in the summer of 2003. I decided to do the entire southern coast of England from west to east. On a map, this is Scotland up here, and England is this area. So what I did was I went from the west coast all the way across to the east coast. This is the London area right there, so you can get the proximity. I visited all the fishing villages. Well, not all of them, at least 3 of them. I stayed in 3 of them, so it was very, very, just felt like I was at home. Almost like living in Morro Bay here on the Central Coast. That's what it felt like. And since I did that for many years, I felt like I was right at home. I decided to schedule my trip over the internet. Look up all the information there and just plan the whole trip from the internet. So I went into the different areas that I wanted to visit and looked for bed and breakfasts, cottages, hotels, just to compare prices, so on and so forth. And in one of the places I stayed in a small hotel, although it was still classified as a bed and breakfast because they served breakfast with your room rate each morning. And the second place I stayed was a cottage with a kitchen, bedroom and bath upstairs. The general area was downstairs, really nice. I enjoyed that. And it was a cottage. It was just separate from any other tourists. I felt like I was actually living there. It felt like an apartment. And then the third and fourth places I stayed were in bed and breakfasts. 3 to 4 story, very narrow. I forget the terrace. They're like terrace hotels, meaning they're side by side, sort of what we see in South San Francisco. You know, the individual houses side by side. Well, these were all side by side, similar to that. So I put together, after I got all the information, I put together this booklet to take with me, so I'd have everything at my fingertips, all the information I needed from my trip, my Bible, and Becca's vacation. I think I'm going to need my glasses for this. My glasses, held together with a safety pin. Well, when you lose a screw, they're the next best thing. So, first of all, in my booklet I had my itinerary, the days that I was to travel and how I was traveling. And then, of course, the first leg of my trip was to Brockenhurst, which is right in here. No, you can't see that. And that's where I rested for a couple of days, acclimating to the time change. And then I went on by train to Newlyn, which is right next door to Penzance, right in the southwestern tip of England, as in Pirates of Penzance. And I just loved it there. And then I traveled back over to Weymouth and stayed there for 2 weeks. And then traveled by train all the way to Hastings and stayed there almost 2 weeks. I was going to stay in Hastings for just a few days and then go on to London and spend the last 8 days in London, but I changed my mind while I was in Hastings. I liked it there. So rather than go to London, and they were having a heat wave, rather than go to London in that heat, not being near water where I was in Hastings, I was right on the seafront. And it was close to between 90 and 100 degrees while I was over there. And so I could just imagine what it would be like in London. Hot and a lot of people, lots of crowds, not nothing to see really, except, you know, your historical buildings and museums and so on and so forth, but I'm not really big on that most of the time, so I prefer to stay on the seacoast and take my walks to the little villages and around there and take a bus here and there. So I traveled mainly by train, and I had my train, the railway maps with me. I had several different train lines maps. And then I also had the tube line map of the transportation in London. I didn't need that as much as I thought I would, since I didn't stay in London, but it was helpful the couple of times that I went through London to get from one side of England to the other by train. I did have to switch to a tube train a few times. And then I also have in my book all the places that I was going to stay, and all of the train tickets. Well, they weren't really tickets, the schedules, where I was to catch this train and where I would get off, how many towns I would pass through. The places I stayed also had little maps of how to get there after I got off the train, just in case I had to walk. I wasn't sure just what was going to be available in these small towns. So I had that handy, and how much every place was costing me, and information on each bed and breakfast or hotel and the cottage, contact numbers. This is the Channel View in Weymouth, and Hastings, the Seasbury, where I stayed. That's where I was going to stay in London. Next time, in the winter. I'm not going there in the summer if I stay in London. So, this was my Bible. That's how I arranged for the trip. I made all the reservations and everything on the internet. It was fun. I really enjoyed the planning part of it, almost as much as the trip, but not entirely. So, on with the show.